also I want to go over how I removed the rear diff. There's three bolts on each side, so you got 1, 2, 3. Alright, and you got 1, 2, 3. And you got the one back here. That's how I removed the rear diff. And I'll show you how to remove the axle. Once you remove the one axle, you can just slide this thing out of the way. I mean, before you slide that out of the way, you would have to get to these 4 drive shaft nuts on it. So, and you also have connectors. Let's see. Okay. This is a top side of the electronic coupler. You have a vacuum hose right there. And you have a, let's see if I can see it. And you have a connector there that you have to unplug. And before you drop the drive shaft, you'll have to disconnect this bracket here. I think there is 1 bolt there and 1 bolt there. You can hit that, and I think it'll be a little bit easier. I mean, you probably could get that pop-in zip tie there, but I think for me it'll be a little tough. It'll be easier just to get the bolts. Alright, to get to that rear mount right here, 19mm, you're going to have to remove the spare tire. Inside, open up the hatch, and I'm going to do that right now actually. I really thought I had to take the whole mat off. I was going to pull this whole thing off. I'm like, I got so much crap back here, but yeah, it's right here. It's a spare tire. So you want to go in there and drop this bolt. Let's see what size that is. I'll try a 17. Alright, it's probably a 19. 17 is too small. Oop, 19 too small. Alright, it's a 21mm right there. Oh yeah, it's coming off really easy, so that's a good thing there. Alright, this is the carrier bearing, or the center bearing for the drive shaft, and you should drop these 2 bolts. One here, and let's see, the other one's right there. Your shield, mine was all rusted out, so as soon as I turned 1 bolt, the whole thing the shield kind of snapped, so I couldn't keep it on. It was trashed by that time. Let's say be careful with this bolt right here. This bolt, I had to go real slow with it. I turned it a quarter, turned it back a quarter, and loosen a quarter, tighten a quarter. Keep inching this one, because this one is rusty, just the way how it sits on the vehicle. This one will get rusty, especially if you have you live in a different type of climate that's not warm all year round. You see snow, salt, all that kind of stuff. Just make sure you take your time with this one. and spray it with some WD or any type of penetrating fluid. And it probably took me like 20 minutes to get this one out because I took my time. I snapped this one in a junkyard. It was going smooth, and all of a sudden it stopped, and I was doing it by hand, and it sheared right off. You don't want to, definitely don't want to snap this one off, so take your time. I mean, also take your time with this one up here too. It's not as bad, but still, you never know. I'm using a 3/8 14mm with a extension that goes from 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. I mean, you should be able to do that with just a 3/8 with a 3/8 extension and a 3/8 drive. And yeah, so far so good. You may have to put the vehicle in neutral, turn the drive shaft to where you want it, put it back in the park, and break them loose. That's how I did it the first time around. The second time around, I'm gonna try to hit those 3 nuts right there, and there's a 4th one on top. I'll probably try to hit the 4th one with a socket and an extension, because I don't feel like getting up and getting down so many times. And once I'm done with that, the drive shaft will drop. The drive shaft will drop down, and I'm going to work on the wiring here. Let's see if I can get this in the perspective. So that's all you got to do for this one is press on it. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how I got this the first time. Push down. Probably a flathead would make that job easier though. Alright, my phone is on drugs. But once you do that, or once I do that, I'm going to start working on getting the axle out, and I'll show you what I'm going to do for that. There's like 4 bolts that I'm going to remove to be able to swing this control arm or spindle or whatever it's called. I'll be able to swing it, and I'll be able to pop the axle out. Once I pop the axle out, I'll start working on the mounting bolts for the differential. The 1, 2, and the 3 up there. And the 1, 2, and the 3rd one is up here. I'll work on that, and it should be straightforward from there on. Alright, I'm going to remove this axle by removing this bolt here, and you have to take the bottom of the shock mount, take that bolt out, and also this one right here, and these 2, this one right there, and that one right there. Once you take those out, you'll be able to swing this whole spindle out of the way, and it'll give you some room to pop that axle out. Okay, if you're having trouble removing that shock bolt, you can just put a socket underneath the jack. Put a socket on top of the jack and jack up the bottom of the strut. Okay, the bolts are out of the spindle, and now I'm going to pop the axle out. Let's get the flash on. No, I don't need a flash. I already popped this one out actually, but if you have a pry bar like this, I'll probably push it back in. Let's see. All you would need is a pry bar like this, and you have to get in between the differential and that part of the axle. Give it a slight tap with a hammer and the axle should pop right out. I took this brace off right here. I didn't completely remove it. I just removed this 12mm and I loosened this 12mm. Make sure you use a 6-point by the time, or I should say the age of these cars, and depending on where you live, you know, a 12-point is going to possibly round that out. So 6-point socket if you can. And let's see, you can kind of see where the spindle sits. Like, I had to really pull back on it. I really had to pull back on it to get this axle to come out, and that's where it's sitting right now, in a down position. And I'm not sure how the diff is gonna come out, but there should be enough space. I removed the bracket there. The first one right there, you see, that's the first one I took off. Then I bent the bracket just a little bit to get to that one in the back there, the one that's right above the axle housing. You know, slightly bent it a little bit, so. And I disconnected this connector. There's still a vacuum hose, but I may, as I'm dropping it, I may see if I can get to it. And I should drain the fluid out of it. And we're almost there. I took 2 of those bolts out on that side, and I took the 2 other ones on the opposite side. And then I removed the rear mount bolt, and I wanted to say it'd probably be easier to remove the electronic coupler. It'll save a couple pounds when you're dropping this thing, because it's going to be a bit heavy. And I think that axle I may have to move that axle out the way, it being on the bottom like that. This is where I'm at right now. I had to move this bar out of the way to allow the axle to drop just a little bit. And I'm holding up the diff with a jack right now, and I'm gonna pop the axle out. I'll pop the axle out, and I should be able to slide it down to this side, out on the driver's side. I finally got the rear out. I would definitely recommend removing the electronic coupler when you're removing it and installing it. It'll make it so much easier. Also, if you can, I would see if you can get another vacuum hose. This way you can make your connection somewhere else down the line, like make an extension somewhere down the line, because it's very tough to get that vacuum line on this while it's in the up position. But if you already had a connection down here, and let's say it'll come out to around here, you'll be able to reach up, grab the vacuum hose, and connect it. So, but take a look at this. I'm sparing this, by the way. I'm spinning it and nothing's happening, so that diff is definitely blown. This is a good diff right here. This is a good one. I'm gonna try to spin it. See if I can get a... That's a good one. This one, not so much. This is the old seal right here. If you look closely, it looks like it has some type of gasket maker on it. Possibly. It looked like some type of gasket maker was on there to help seal it up. So I'm thinking maybe I'll put some on the new one, or maybe not. Oh, there's definitely gasket maker on here, or some type of sealant. You can kind of see that glob right there. And I'll put a little bit on mine and see how it turns out. I'm also using a 32 to drive it in. It sits pretty good on there. It's not perfect, there's some, but at least it's on the hard part, so that would be good. If you have trouble removing one of these, what I would do, let's see, for example, I was trying to get one of the sides to pop out, and you could just hit one side in. If you hit one side in, it'll automatically pop the other side out. And I used a pry bar. I do have seal pullers with me, which I probably could have used. Once I hit the one side in, I could have probably pulled it out with a pick or something, a hook pick. But just keep in mind not to get too close to the surface, the mating surface. Don't get too close to that. You don't want to scratch it or anything. But yeah, that's a little tip. The diff seal is a pain in the butt to get out. I managed to grab one side with the vice grip and I was able to pull it, but it took me a while working and trying to get it out. I kind of made some scratches and digs trying to take it out. I definitely would need a proper tool, proper seal puller for that one. And the old one does have a sealant, gasket maker, whatever you want to call it. I did not have a socket big enough to drive that on, so I used this to tap it on, you know, work my way around, and I did have to pull out a little bit. You know, I use this very carefully to pull it out just a little bit. You know, you have to grab like the outer. You can't grab this inner part because you'll just rip it out. You'll really tear it just like that. So you really got to grab the hard part when you're making your adjustments to get it to sit flush. And yeah, it's pretty good. Hopefully it doesn't leak in the future or anything. And I also bought some seals. Might as well change the seals while you have it out. So I have 2 axle seals, and I have what do you call that again? I have diff seal. I guess it's a differential seal. So this is it right here. Bought it off Rock Auto. And that's the part number. And let's see if I get the part number on this. Part number right there. There we go. Also, when I pulled the electronic coupler away from the differential, I noticed that they do seal it. There's sealant going all the way around. So I'm going to have to reseal that. Okay. I finally got the differential in. It's in and is bolted. I got both axles in. And I had a real tough time. Getting the differential in. I started with this axle, because the same way I took it out, just in reverse order. But I had the axle and it wouldn't go all the way in. It went as far as like the shoulder of the axle and it just stopped. And I tried turning that output shaft, tried turning that and tried putting it on just like, like a normal transmission, and just wouldn't go. I tried so many times. I even took it out. I put the old one, try to get the old one in, and the old one wouldn't even go in. I just had suspicion. I was wondering if the V6 diff would be any different than the 4-cylinder diff, because this is out of a V6. But my suspicions were wrong. The diffs are exactly the same in terms of mating the axle. And I finally got the axle in. It was a C-clip. It's that C-clip that's at the end. Well, it's almost at the end of the axle. That was very loose, and that was, it was binding and stopping the axle from sliding in properly. So I took that C-clip out and I used a vice grip to tighten it up as much as I could and put it back on. I centered the clip inside, on the axle, and first try it went right in. So I put the side on first, followed by the mounts, and made sure I got the mounts in, and then I got that driver rear axle, and then I finished up the mounts, put the tire back on. And it's definitely easier to install without the electronic coupler. I'm going to do the electronic coupler now. So if you're removing it, I would probably take the electronic coupler out, then take the diff out. It'll be easier also to remove the suspension components on that side as well. That'll allow you to get more space for the axle, because I was kind of fighting the axle a little bit while putting the diff in. Just some FYI. So the electronic coupler is ready to go in. I got some sealant on there. I got the washer on there. After I put that on, I'll get the drive shaft on, and then I'll work on these brace mounts. Work on the brace mounts, then I have to button up the suspension on this side, and it should be all good to go. Refill the oil. And I can't remember what oil I'm using, or I'll have to look and see. That vacuum hose that I was talking about being a pain, you can kind of see it up there. Right up there in the background. It's right there. I was actually able to get to it using one of these. I bought this one at Harbor Freight. Just like a long extended needle nose with a with that 90 degrees turn at the end. I'm able to get up in there and I'll show you. Let's see. I'm able to grab the hose from right here. So that ended up working out. This bracket back here was that was kind of tough. That one bolt in the back you see there, that was kind of tough to get to. I had to remove this bracket here out the way, that support bracket, to get back up in there. But once it was up there, it made it a bit easier. So just FYI. I'm in the final stages of wrapping everything up. Right now I'm about to fill the diff with some gear oil. I got 80W90. I can't remember exactly what the factory calls for. I'll have to look that up in a bit. But make sure you check all your bolts. Make sure they're all tight. Make sure you didn't miss anything. Also, just keep in mind when you're putting things back together, try to go in reverse order of how you remove them, and wear proper eye protection, hand protection, all your PPEs, and if you want to know this pump, I got this pump at Harbor Freight as well. This is pretty good. It's one motion. It sucks in, and when you compress the plunger, it pushes the fluid up and right into the diff. It's pretty awesome, actually. Alright, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment. Bye.